Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mark Givens' discussion about small presses. And we're at Culturama. This is the third event of the day. We're going to have a fourth in a few hours with T. Anders Carson, who is personified joy. And you always get some really good prompts out of Anders. I just want to introduce Mark Givens. He is a local publisher, I don't even know how to call you. You're just kind of a hub of activity. The culture of the Pomona Valley often swirls around Mark. So, Mark Givens.
Hi. Wow, that was a lot to live up to. Hi, everybody. It's nice to meet you. So the purpose of this session is not to, it's called New Ways to Envision Small Press Publishing. That's what we're going to be talking about today, and hopefully it's a discussion. I want to hear from everybody if you feel comfortable doing that. But we're not going to try to remake the small press publishing industry. We're not trying to, rebuild the profession or destroy a system or anything like that. We're just attempting to reimagine how we think about independent books and authors, how we talk about what we do, and how we envision ourselves in this whole system. So, and the end result will be hopefully that we gain a new measure, kind of where we are in the system, in how we measure our success, where we are, how we help other people kind of understand what we're doing. So that's the purpose of this. And I want to go around, if it's okay with everybody, to introduce yourself and tell me if you're connected to a small press, and also what you think of when you hear the word small press. So, John, would you like to start? Oh, you know what? I'll start. Sorry. My name is Mark Givens, and I've started in 2011, started a press called Pelicanesis. And we've been publishing for 10 years now, which is a lot of fun. Got hundred of book out. Recently, I started up a small chapbook imprint with Dennis Kalachi of Shrimper Records. And so I'm the co-owner of Bamboo Dart Press, and we're exploring what the modern day chapbook is. And we have a series that includes poetry, photography, micro memoir, microfiction, a lot of stuff like that. So, and when I think about small press, I'm drawn to the comparisons with independent music and independent indie labels, that kind of thing. That's kind of the world I come from. So that's what I think about is, and it's kind of led to some ideological problems, I think, because it's useful, but only up to a point. So, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So that's who I am. That's what I think of when I think of small press. John?
I am John Branningham. What was the first question?
So are you associated with a small press? Do you
I am associated with several. My wife used to own a small press, and I gave her some little bit of help, and not a lot actually. She did almost all of it herself. And then my publishers basically are small press. So Mark is one of my publishers, and there's several others. But what I think of, I for me, small press is the way I prefer to go, because there's freedom, there's relationship, there's all sorts of things. Mark can help guide me with my work so that it becomes better in and of itself, whereas a larger press might want to ask me to change it to be more marketable. So yeah,
that's good. The flexibility and the ability to address an author's needs is definitely one of the strong points of a small press. Thomas?
Hello. My name is Tom Thomas, or Thomas, etc. But regarding small press, yeah, I have a small press that I started in 2014, and mainly what I did because it was a need that I felt that there are a number of people who, would go to readings and they'd be reading poem and they didn't really think, well, I'm not really a poet, and then I hear their poems and I go, God, they're amazing. And generally that was among, women too, especially. So, I had in mind a few women I really wanted to publish, and then, it seems like the guys took over, but I wanted to try to get in the hands of the poets, and a book.
Do you do primarily poetry, or is it all exclusively poetry?
Right now it's pretty much exclusively poetry. In my envisioning it, I wanted to start including fiction.
Mm-hmm.
But that was at the time my wife was going to start helping, and as soon as she retired, she had some health problems which prevented that, so we didn't go in that direction.
And what's the name of your press?
Arroyo Seco Press.
Okay.
Which is actually named after the river that my mother grew up on, which is the Arroyo Seco.
Nice.
That goes up from Pasadena down to LA.
That's great. Lavina,
so I want to get books in the hands of people who, so usually it's like the first book was my goal. It expanded beyond that.
Thank you. So. Yeah. How about you, Lavina?
It's Lavina.
Lavina, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. I'm not affiliated with a small press. When I think of small presses, I think maybe that's a place that would publish me, because I think the larger presses are primarily for someone who's arrived, and I'm just beginning to try and get a book published.
So the idea that a larger publishing house is kind of a home to people who are already established is also a very interesting topic, and we'll kind of touch on that a little bit too. How long have you been publishing things, or have you been writing things?
I've been writing many years. I got an MFA in, how many years ago? 40 years ago. And was away from writing for quite a while, but have been seriously writing. It's just sending it out is tough. It feels like it's not worth a whole lot, the time that you put into sending things out. So it's taken me a long time to decide I'm going to do it,
Sure.
That book out.
Thank you. Tim Hatch. Okay.
Hi, sorry. No, I'm here.
Right.
Am I just, what am I doing?
So you're introducing yourself, and you're telling us if you are affiliated with a small press, and also what you think of when you think of small press.
Oh, okay, cool. So I'm Tim Hatch. I write poetry and, I write stuff. And I am affiliated with two pretty excellent small presses I think you've heard of, Bamboo Dart Press and Pelicanesis. Pelicanesis has published my, I don't know, it's sort of a recent memoir of extreme weight loss journey. And Bamboo Dart has published my poetry, and which just came out last week.
Yeah. Which is a wonderful book that's getting really good reviews, and people are really enjoying it. And I am incredibly honored to be able to publish it. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I just wrote this morning that you and Dennis are two exceptionally wonderful people, and working with you has been an exceptionally wonderful experience. So thank you for that.
Oh,
and I'm not just saying that because we're on camera and being recorded.
That's why I wanted to do a session, actually, is to gather together a bunch of people who would, say really nice things.
Praise as possible. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. On the record. Yeah.
Thanks.
And what do I think of when I think of a small press? I think of two things. I think of a situation much like the Bamboo Dart situation, where it's a small organization run by one or two people, and where they can work very closely with the creative people, whatever that means, and meet whatever needs, and that's enough on that. And then the other thing I think of is sort of the the bullshit scam operations where it's like all you got to do to get published
Yeah.
by us is to get 100 people to pre-order your book and blah blah blah. And I mean, and I know that there are some legit presses that do that too, but
it's definitely a new model that is growing into its own. The idea that you pay for it's kind of a guided self-published model, which is
Yeah.
interesting. They call it hybrid. They call it a bunch of different things, but it's really it depends. Yeah, it's an
Yeah.
interesting model.
And I know, yeah, like I say, I know of at least one press in LA that has done that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I guess what I should say is I don't think there's anything wrong with the way they've approached it. I just think it's one of those things where, depending on the people leading the charge with it, it could go, or it clearly has gone horribly wrong in some cases. And but anyway, that's what I think of when I think of a small press.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Aruni.
Hi, I'm Aruni. I'm finishing up my manuscript for my first full-length collection. I only really have experience with small presses. I've worked with Thomas, which was a joy, and worked with Shannon Phillips and at Picture Show Press. I'm working with Eric Morago at Moontide Press, and he's an absolute prince. And I gotta say that Bamboo Dart has published some of my favorite people,
Oh,
including
great.
Tim Hatch and John Brantingham,
Yeah.
and more recently Ken Johnson as well.
Mhm.
So I do have to say I really like that square format that you use.
Well, thank you. Yeah,
I love the variety of different voices that you're publishing.
thank you.
So kudos to you.
Thanks.
I have heard about like the boutique sort of vanity press. I don't have any experience directly with them, but
Mhm.
I think there are a lot of people who are looking for a way to be heard,
Mhm.
and by any means necessary, I suppose.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's true. There are there's a wide variety of options available now that weren't available 10 years ago. That's very true. How about can we hear from Kate?
I'm in New Zealand, and my experience with small presses is that a friend who's a graphic designer and I started one in the early 2000s, and we did about 5 projects over the 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
It was so much work, and
Yeah.
she had kids and I was getting older, and it was like we let it go because it was just hard work.
Yeah.
And since then, I have decided I'm 73 and I don't know how long I have on the earth, and I have a lot of words to get out into the world. So I self-publish on Amazon now,
I see.
because I don't have the time to wait on, presses to tell me it'll be 3 years and we'll publish you.
So the quick turnaround is key to the small press experience for you. Most
Yes.
of the stuff that most of the examples that I'm going to be talking about in a minute are very U.S. centric. I think they're very capitalist centric. So I apologize if they don't fit a social or political model that is it's familiar to me because that's what I experience.
Right.
Okay. And can we hear from Perry?
Hi. I'm pretty new to this whole thing, I guess. I have a little bit of experience with like indie lit mags and stuff like that. And I have one chapbook that's being published with Alien Buddha, who've been great. I think what I want to do is I do want to self-publish, just because like I was interested in starting I was interested in starting a press a few years ago, when I didn't actually know what that meant, and I didn't start it, thank goodness, because I know it's a lot of work. But I think that that process of being able to control my own marketing, my own readings, my own like my own kind of like how I'm presented is really kind of important to me, and just being able to have like my fingers in all the aspects of my publication, because like it is my baby and I want it to be done right. And yeah, so I've really loved working with Alien Buddha. They're great. And I just think that I'm going to be self-publishing for the next little bit.
Yeah, those are good reasons too. The control is definitely one of the large attractions for that. If someone doesn't want to introduce themselves or talk too much, please feel free to say no. No, thank you. Okay, thank you, Perry. Kimberly.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm Kimberly, and I'm and I do write, but I'm not associated with any press yet. I'm still just getting a few pieces here and there into journals. So that's kind of my experience. But when I think of small press, I do think of more like niche type of experience, but I also think of more close, a little more one-on-one type of experience. However, I don't really know. I don't at all. My wife publishes academic books, and she's been picked up by big publishers, and she still has to do quite a bit of the marketing herself. So I think
yeah, the academic market is certainly a huge it's interesting and confusing because it is a big press, especially if you go with somebody like Springer, or if you get published by any of the big textbook manufacturers. But the academic world is really interesting because you do end up doing a lot of the promotion and marketing yourself, and it's a different audience too. It's kind of a captive audience, but not really. So that's a really interesting conundrum. But okay, how about can we hear from Connie?
I'm Connie Taylor, and I own Fathom Publishing. It's an Alaska publisher. I've been publishing since the 1980s, and I started with Alaskana books, and then in the 90s I did legal textbooks, and now I'm mostly doing memoirs, fiction, and children's books. And I think of a small press as a publisher who's not one of the big New York group, and also a publisher who works closely with the authors.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. What was the name of your press?
Fathom, F like Frank, ATHOM.
Fathom Publishing. Okay, great. Great. Well, thank you. And thanks for joining us. Hi, Stephanie. We're introducing ourselves, and I'm glad that you made it here. We're introducing ourselves, and we are telling if we're associated with a small press, and also what we think of when we think of small press. Would you like to go?
Sure, always happy to talk, and great to see you, Mark, as always. Yeah, I'm Stephanie Hammer, and I actually am involved with publication. I'm the managing editor for a very small online journal, Shark Reef Literary Magazine. And then as a writer, I was smiling, Mark, well, during the discussion of the academic press situation, because I'm a recovering professor. So I've published academic books. And you weren't kidding when you were talking about a captive audience. And I've also published with small presses as a creative writer. And I love working with small presses because I love the bamboo dart among them, because I love the no bullshit factor. And I also really feel that bookmaking and publishing is really relationship based. And I really enjoy developing those relationships with small press folks.
That's great. Yeah, the relationship is a strong point. That's absolutely right. But how about can we hear from Carrie?
Hi, I'm Carrie. I'm a writer from Pasadena. I am not yet involved with any small presses, but probably will be in the future. So in the near future, I have a collection that I'm putting together. So I'm going to enter in a contest in December.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah.
So, and then if it doesn't go, then I'll probably look into publishing it in a small press. So,
great.
So yeah. So anyway.
Well, welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I hope you find it useful here.
Yeah.
How can we hear from Carly Patterson?
Hello, everybody. My name's Carly. I live in San Diego. I'm a writer. I write poetry. I'm just starting out with publishing, but I love the idea of farm fresh eggs and microbrews. So I'm excited to just support innovative ways of publishing and just start to get to the lay of the land. So I appreciate hearing about this.
That's fantastic. Okay, good. Good. Can we hear now from Nina Lewis?
Yeah, a little bit like Kate, I'm in a different country, so I appreciate what you're going to talk through will be mainly US. But I'm in England, in the UK, and my experience as small press is as a poet being published by small press. And definitely over here in the last 6 or 7 years, the market's really grown for small presses. And so has the sort of understanding of people starting their route, at least with a small press. And I see them, I mean, it's kind of already been said by people, that relationship, but there's like an entire ecosystem. Like in the festivals over here, you very often get panel discussions with a plethora of different small presses, but you probably wouldn't find the big publishers kind of on the same stand. They kind of, you know, whereas small presses, it's not necessarily family, but they kind of support each other.
Right.
Over here, at least that's my experience. So there's not their competition against each other, but that's not how they act, you know, so that you know, and I think quite a lot of the poets are shared across different presses. So there might be that aspect as well, that, you know, because it's quite a small industry, everybody knows each other anyway. But I think for me, I think it's just having that really close relationship with your editor and publisher.
Sure.
That, yeah, just seems, I don't know how I would have coped with a big, well, I don't actually think anybody would start with a big publisher, but if they did, I don't know how.
We'll be talking a little bit about that in just a minute. The idea of where you start and how you start. The idea that small press is for starting out. That's a very interesting take, and I kind of want to see if we can change that a little bit. Okay, can we hear from Marie, perhaps?
Hi, I am Marie from Manchester, UK. I am writing poetry, and I have a collection. It's based on past experiences and also from observing other people's like circumstances. It's going to be like entitled A Roller Coaster of Emotions, but I don't know what to do with it once I'm done, because I'm almost done. I looked into self-publishing because it seemed to be the less confusing option, but I would be very happy to have information during this workshop, because like I said, I've never been involved with any publisher. And when I, for example, come across some publishers doing workshop, let's say on Zoom or something, you Google what they do, and you realize, for example, that the person holding the workshop maybe has published some books, but none of them has either reviews or a couple of reviews. So it's like, if your own book is not successful or doesn't seem to be, how do people, let's just take a baby, how do people trust? How do you know which publisher to trust, kind of thing? So yeah.
Yeah, those are good observations, and hopefully you get a little bit of information out of this here.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And how about Eric?
Oh, hello. I just logged in a bit late, so I just presuming from other individuals' responses, are you just asking for base introductions and experiences with the small press?
Yeah, exactly. Just, are you associated with a small press, and also what do you think of when you hear the word small press?
Sure. I I enjoy the small press. I've published with mostly small press houses, some of the medium-sized houses as well, and I feel I generally have pretty good experiences. I also run a small press myself, just for a kind of a few weird vanity projects. The nice thing with the small press is that it's open to creative vision, that generally the small press publishers, they're willing to try new, innovative, progressive ideas that you're not necessarily going to find in the mainstream. It's also a little bit more of an intimate environment to be able to kind of work one-on-one with like-minded individuals.
Sure.
I've worked with a number of small presses that I do want to say they're generally positive experiences, but I think it's just the nature of the world. If you're in a room with 30 other people, there's just sometimes different personalities, just sometimes different expectations or the ways that people choose to do business. So a lot of it comes down, it's a matter of, if you want to build a relationship with a particular small press, first is kind of going through your own vetting process, seeing what they've done in the past and what other reviewers have mentioned. Just kind of, you want to build up and network from there, and try to build up good lasting. I think that's the key is lasting relationships.
And what was the name of your press?
Oh, my press is called Dark Moon Books. I do dark fiction, speculative fiction, light horror.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, who do we have here? How about Joy Hancock?
I've written off and on all my life. I have not written that much for publication, except for just like self-published in at Amazon. So, but I am interested in small presses, and I think it's something I want to do. So I'm trying to look at more information for submission and stuff like that.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. All right, Nana Norto.
Hi. So my experience with small presses to this point, as far as publishing, is small independent journals. And I've seen how well small presses have treated friends, writers who have published with them. And so I've decided to focus more in that direction as far as submissions of poetry and also fiction.
That seems to be one of the prevailing themes, is the relationship between the small press and the writer. I think that's an important thing to note. May we hear from Hiba?
Hi, I'm a poet. I write poetry. Some of it has been published in literary magazines. I don't really have any experience with presses, but that's why I'm here. I'm curious.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for joining us. And so you haven't published. You don't own a publishing house or anything like that. You don't own Random House or anything?
No.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us. May we hear from Charlene? Charlene's having trouble with the audio. Perhaps we can hear from Cindy.
Hi, Mark. How are
Hi,
you?
Cindy. I'm good. How are you doing?
Good. I have no experience with small press other than all my friends are published on your press. And I'm very jealous. Okay, I'll throw that in. And let's see, I did publish, indie publish, self-publish on CreateSpace, which doesn't exist anymore, a children's book. And it was a lot of work. And it was a bundle package, and they took a bundle from me. And it was just hard. And I noticed that with a small press, you get a lot of help. I mean, I've watched my friends, and so I'm very interested in small press, and I think small press brings hope to writers that they can be published, and maybe it is a door into you know, we can dream the big five. I don't know. I'm here to learn. So
Well,
thank you, Mark.
okay, sure. And your book is beautiful, by the way.
Aw, you're
The
sweet.
mouse at mission, Mission Mouse. What is it called?
Mouse wedding. at
Mouse
the-
Wedding at the Mission Inn. Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much.
It's beautiful. May we hear from Edna?
Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. I'm in New Zealand as well.
Okay.
And I hello. I am not that familiar with publication in general, but I guess in New Zealand most of us are small press anyway. But I did my publication so far has been in anthologies, and that was not really a direct contact with the publisher in that way. I mean, like you submit, either you are accepted or not, but there's not much personal involvement. So I'm just really curious to hear about the opportunities here in the States, and maybe I can submit something for one of your publications. I wouldn't mind to have a list of all of you guys who are publishers later on, so I can look at who is doing what and what I can. Because I write poetry, I write short stories, I write a little bit of nonfiction, all kinds.
Great. Well,
yeah.
thank you for joining us. That's I hope you get some information too. May we hear from Michelle?
Oh, hi, this
Hi.
is Michelle. I am only I'm Thomas's wife, so
Oh, hello.
most of what I know is through him with his small press. Well, it's actually ours, but he does 99.9% of the work.
Right. Okay. Great. Well, thanks for joining us. Dennis, are you there? Dennis is here, but he's a very very shy man. He's a very sexy man, but he's also a very shy man. So Dennis is my partner in Bamboo Dart Press. He runs Shrimper Records, and he has been involved in independent music, which is, you know, a form of publishing for 30 some odd years. So that, I think, did I get everybody? Did everyone chime in there? That's fantastic. I think we got everybody. If anyone feels like saying anything, please feel free to speak up, because this should be a discussion. So that is great. We have got a lot of writers. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 publishers, and some nice New Zealand and Manchester, England folks. So this is fantastic. Okay, so let's start off here with. Oops. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the common perceptions of what small press publishing is. We covered some of it just now when we were going through. We were talking about they're small, they're agile, they're able to move, and they're not part of this big conglomeration. So, and that's a very key thing. But what I hope to accomplish here also is that I want to kind of break down this idea that small press is somehow subpar. It's like the minor leagues to the majors, which are the big five, well, big four now. But we're small press is not the minor leagues. Small press is a thing unto itself. It is a form of publishing that is not like, it doesn't have to be a stepping stone to a larger publication, a larger publishing house. It exists on its own. So one of the common misperceptions is that it is the minor leagues. It's also you can think that it's kind of a stepping stone. It's an entry into the publishing world, and it can be. I'm not like a lot of these models, they are true. It can be a stepping stone into a larger publishing lifestyle, but it doesn't have to be. And we don't have to imagine that it's just a starting point. We can think about it in many, many different ways. So I'll continue. The publishing world, there's also a perception that it's some sort of tiered system, right? That you've got small press here, you've got self-publishers, you got small press, you've got these like, kind of midline houses that are owned by large corporations, and then you've got the big ones. I think that that can be a useful model if you're looking at, and I love to do this too, is look at what little companies are owned by what big companies, right? It's kind of fun to look at that kind of stuff. So if you're looking around for an opportunity to publish, you might stumble across a company called Riverhead Books and say, oh, I've seen their Facebook site. They look like a scrappy little publisher. They're putting out calls for people to review the books, and they're looking for book influencers and stuff like that. Well, they're owned by Penguin Random House, which is owned by Bertelsmann, which is a huge German company, right? So here's Penguin Random House, and they have this little subsidiary called Riverhead Books that looks like a scrappy little publisher. And they're just not. So I love to find these things out, because to me, it's helpful to say, okay, you have to look into it a little bit closer. Another example is EcoPress or Echo Press, which was an indie press that started in '71. And last year, an author named Ben Moser won the Pulitzer, right? And you think, well, that's cool, nice indie press publisher. And he got hyped because it's a small indie press, but it's an imprint of HarperCollins. So not strictly small press. And these companies, the music business does this all the time also. Mute Records would be owned by, BMG, which is, Sony BMG. So there are all of these little companies that are owned by larger companies. So it muddies the water. But I love looking at that kind of stuff because to me, it's fascinating. So this is a way, there's this idea that you as an author can sit at the counter in a coffee shop and you'll be discovered. You'll be, become the next star. And I think that at some point there was some that held some water. I don't think it does anymore. I don't think that an author can sit around and just be discovered or deliver, the poem for Obama, and then all of a sudden they're a star. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of work and a long time. We have friends who, grind away in music for years and years and years. And finally, it starts to pay off a little bit because you've been working really hard and you work your way through that system, not up, but through the system. You work your way from here and you say, here's where I want to be. How do I get there? And so you start working that way. It's not, that's one model. And this is what a lot of authors, I think authors have that same conception, that same perception, where they say, if I start with a small press, then once that book gets noticed, then I can get noticed by somebody else and then publish bigger and bigger and bigger until you're Stephen King. Everyone wants to be Stephen King. Not the, yeah, no, never mind. But I don't think that's really true. I don't think that authors can just sit around and be discovered, or start with a small press and work their way up in the same way. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen, doesn't mean it's not a useful model, but I think that we kind of lock ourselves into that frame of mind when we don't have to be there. We can be someplace else. So what I'm thinking about is mainly about the companies, the small press companies who think that they are either like on their own way, you know, they're going to get gobbled up by Penguin and they're going to be the next big thing, right? And again, that could happen. You know, you could be the next American Idol, but it doesn't, we don't have to lock ourselves into that frame of mind either, right? We can think of it in different ways. So what other ways can we think about it? Okay. Let's look at farm fresh eggs. Okay. If I'm a farmer and I've got some chickens and I'm making, the chickens are making eggs and I love it because I wake up in the morning, I have eggs for breakfast. I love that. That is what I want to do. I want chickens to make me eggs. So every morning I say, thank you, chickens, and I have my eggs and I am happy with the whole thing. So what's wrong with that? The answer is absolutely nothing. That is a great way to live. You know, I want to, you know, my purpose is to be self-sustaining, to just kind of have some chickens and have some farm fresh eggs. Okay. What if you want to expand your business? What if you say, you know what, I've got some extra eggs. I'm going to open a stand on the corner and people who drive by, they can buy my eggs. Totally valid. Okay. Expand that. You've got extra eggs, you sell them. Perfect. You know what? I really enjoy selling eggs. So I'm going to see if I can sell them to a market, right? So that's how you expand. You move into that market. Your eggs are good. People start picking them up and you say to yourself, I want to sell more eggs. So you say, I'm going to get a contract with a bigger company. Now you're producing eggs like crazy and it's no longer about the eggs. It's about the selling of the eggs. Okay, so that's a model. That's a useful model to envision how we perceive publishing, because both of those models are true. All of those models are true and useful, and we can use them in different ways. When we look at the tiered system, we can say that's useful when I'm thinking about it this way. If I'm thinking about the relationship for the editor and the author, if I'm looking for that, if that's important to me, where are you going to look? And the model that you're probably going to examine the closest would be the small press, because that relationship exists within that model. If you look at a tiered system, you're going to get lost along the way and you'll become just another chicken, right? That's not a good place to be. Maybe that's what you want. You just want to churn out books. You know, you get paid. The important thing is to get paid for it. The important thing is to earn a living. That's why you write, to earn a living. Okay, perfect. Crank out some books. They can be good books. They don't have to be bad books. They can be good books. Crank them out, get them going, get that process underway, make some money. So that's a useful model. Those are all useful models. Okay. Now let's look at microbreweries. So we have some friends who own a couple of microbreweries, California Craft Ales, and the Dale Brothers last name Press. they publish beer. Sorry about that. They exist on their own. They are craft brewers. That's what they do. They win awards. They are incredibly well respected. They've increased their distribution. They are now, like Claremont Craft Ales are sold in Trader Joe's here. So they are looking at their business model and saying, what is important to us? What are we doing this for? The answer is they do it for the beer, and they do it for the environment, the community that is around them, right? But it's also a business. Okay. So you can use this tiered model to kind of envision how to grow your business. There's also a misconception especially in the US, but certainly in capitalism, that says that if you're not growing, you die, right? We're all sharks. And that's not true. You can hit a point where you are comfortable and you are happy and you are successful. You don't have to grow anymore. You've done it. Just keep doing it, and you can live a happy, satisfied, fulfilled life, right? Capitalism tells us to continue to grow or die, but it doesn't have to be that way. So yes, fight the power. So here's the microbrew system has awards. It has its own culture. There's a whole ecosystem built around microbreweries, and they make beer for the microbreweries, right? That to me is an incredibly interesting model. Can we apply that to small press instead of a tiered system? Because they don't want to be bought by Budweiser. They're not competing with Budweiser, right? That's a weird thing to think that they would like even compare themselves to Budweiser or something like that. No, they are Claremont Craft Ales. They participate in their own awards programs. They have, Blue Ribbon beer. They do it. They've got their own ecosystem. The same is true for independent films. A lot of independent films, they don't intend to be distributed to large companies. They are for independent film festivals. They debut at Cannes. It's like they've got their own ecosystem built. So does small press. It's not as prominent, but it does exist. Small press and music share a lot in common as far as the perception of the people who are involved in this whole thing. The awards programs for music don't exist. It's the Grammys or nothing. It's like there aren't any really prominent, like Cannes, there aren't any really prominent music awards that are not huge, right? They don't have any. And the book awards, there are more nowadays. There are more now than 10 years ago when I started this. There's the IBPA, which has some really good awards. There's the Benjamin Franklin Awards, but it still struggles with things like the Pulitzer and the Booker Prize, right? There's this idea that small press, that is part of the small press, And it is kinda, right? I mean, you can nominate people for a Pulitzer, but I think we're doing harm to ourselves when we get to when we only think about the one model, when we only think about a tiered system where we can become the next American Idol, where we can win the Pulitzer. Sure, of course we can. But really, let's focus on what we do really, really well, which is develop this community and the relationships there, and publish things, like Eric said, that you wouldn't normally see, you know, just like things that kind of push some boundaries. Let's look at the literature that we're interested in, the things that really make our hearts beat. Let's focus on that. Let's give awards for that. Okay. So instead of a tiered system, what about thinking about silos? That's a popular term these days. So you have things, you've got the big four presses, and you've got all of these small presses. We'll call them small press, independent press. That's fine. Small press is fine. But this is their strength is in their community. Their strength is in their ability to move quickly, do all that stuff. So let me see if I can clarify that a little bit. Just because the output is the same doesn't mean the businesses are the same. The output's the same. It's a book or it's a record. But just because the output's the same doesn't mean the business is the same. For example, libraries and bookstores. The goal is the same goal. They're both dealing with books. The goal is to get books in front of people. But it's two different businesses. It's two different models to accomplish a similar task with a similar product. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about, is that instead of thinking about small press as a stepping stone or a cog in this larger machine, let's look at it for what its strengths are and what it does well. What do so Lavina has some things to say here. I think some of us, especially if we're older, are looking for someone who sees their work as valuable. Yeah. So the small press wouldn't be a stepping stone or a starting point. This is very true. So where you come into the process that's a really good point. Where you start into the business of book publication will kind of determine how you feel about it and how you react to it and how it reacts to you and what some of the strengths are. If you're getting older or you're curious or uncertain about how things are going to go, you're not going to pitch it to Penguin or Riverhead Books. You're going to look for people who are also interested in your work, in your community. That's a good point. So, and I think that I get a little bit turned around because I'm coming at this whole problem as a publisher, right? So when I look at the models, I'm looking at it from a publisher's standpoint. And you are looking at it from a writer's standpoint. How do writers change this way of thinking? How do writers influence how other people perceive small press? And I think that's an interesting problem, which I don't think I have the answer to. But I think that writers can influence the way others think about small press by changing the model that they perceive when they're talking about small press. So instead of talking about what would be a good example here? Not thinking about it as well, if all else fails, I can publish with a small press, right? More like thinking about where do I want my work to be? Where should this exist? Where should my work, where can I connect as a writer? Where can I find that kind of community that I'm looking for? And I think that's a valuable question. So if you are starting out and you're new to writing, looking around at what's available is incredibly important. As you have all found out, it could be lit magazines, it could be anthologies. Like, there are ways to enter into publishing. The other thing is that you don't have to publish. You can write for years. As a couple of people said that they've been writing for years and years, never published. You're still a writer, for goodness sake. You know, you are expressing yourself through the written word. That's a writer. A published author is a different beast. It's kind of the same thing that I get into with people who talk about going to readings. Being a reader, like performing your work to an audience, is a completely different skill than writing the words down on paper. You can do some things in solitary, and if you never want to talk to people, you don't have to talk to people. You can just go about your business. You are still a writer. So when we talk about changing the paradigm about how we feel about small press, we're talking about entering into a larger community. So there is a bit of expectation, maybe. There's a bit of you are reaching out, you're taking a risk. It's a bit of risky behavior, folks. So don't tread lightly. No, tread lightly, because it's a bit risky. But you are giving up a little bit of anonymity. You're publishing your words to the world. You're opening yourself up to criticism too. So you have to be a little bit prepared for that. The small press community is much more welcoming. Is that true? Is that true? Much more welcoming? Because I think that also in the small press community, people are also more willing to criticize you directly, right? Is that true? That is kind of true. If you're a faceless cog in a big publishing house, you are kind of protected by that anonymity, aren't you? So you are kind of taking a risk by becoming part of a smaller community, because you are going to have more of that direct interaction, aren't you? That's interesting. So should we just keep talking? Does anyone have any input here? Yes, Kate?
I want to have some sort of conversation, and maybe this isn't the place for it, about the freedom and the creativity that comes with digital publishing, and how we can do things differently. And what we do to shed that whole idea of I must hold the book in my hands, adoration, and look to taking away the boundaries that print gives us, and look at the possibilities of mixing our work with audio and visual and so forth.
That's interesting. The digital realm, which has really started to shine in the last 10 years, that is an interesting artistic question. Excuse me. It's also a really interesting, especially with a pandemic, a way to reach out. It doesn't have to be a physical thing. It can be much more long distance. I'm wondering if there is that sense of community with a digital product. You can still read, you can still do live readings with digital books. You can still, like, what is the difference? I think it's just a matter of what product you're producing, right? But it doesn't change the community. It doesn't change the way small press community perceives itself, right? Because it's still part of the same product, I think. Isn't that right? That seems to make sense to me.
Just the audience a bit.
Yeah.
That's where I would see the difference.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that the digital publishing community is separate from the print publishing community. I see a great diversion there among my friends and, you know, the people that I encounter in the publishing world.
Okay, I think I just hit on something that looks at that. The publishing world has many, the small press world has many different models and many different formats: hardcover, you know, paperback, you know, digital. Oh, Connie has a cat. I'm sorry. There are many different formats, many different models within small press. You can, as an author, you can choose to present your material however it is. If the small press community, the subsection, if the subsection wants to talk about ebooks exclusively, that's something that they bond over. For example, on Ravelry, which is a knitting site, they do a lot of fabric art and a lot of string-based stuff. So there are groups for knitters, groups for cross stitch, groups for various types of needlework. And they all go off and they talk about their own things. And then they get together sometimes in different chat areas and they talk about just the world in general. But there are subsections and they have their particular interests that are addressed by very specific things. Same is true here. It's a paperback book, it's an ebook, it's a hardcover, it's, you know, now we're going to do audiobooks. So all of those people go over here and talk about audiobooks, and all these people go over here and talk about ebooks, but it's all the same, it's all part of the same small press community. Yeah, so Connie says there's something more satisfying about having a print book. And there's something that I love about print books as well. But, you know, when it comes right down to it, they're just different. Like a print book or a hardcover, or like, there really isn't much of a difference. It's subsections of the same thing. It's still your words that are going out there. I also find it satisfying to have a print book. That's just because I'm an old guy.
I was going to say the young people are not collecting the way that we collect.
But I'll tell you something else, though, is that my folks who are in their late 80s, they prefer the Kindle because you can blow up the type and you can change it so that like you can have a large print book like for any book. And to me, that's fascinating. They're using it correctly. They're using that technology correctly. But I think that's kind of fascinating, is like, as there are models, different models, the hybrid publishing model where the author puts in a bunch of money. There's also the self-publishing model where the author pays for everything. The model that I use is an independent press model, which is that the authors don't pay for anything. They don't, that's my investment is in the author's work. The authors can help to promote things, but I supply materials and I supply material support, and then the authors can, you know, I'm working with some folks right now in some film makers, some film producers in Palm Springs who are willing to pay for a publicist, and you know their marketing campaign is going to be huge, they assure me, and I'm all for it. I will supply as much material as they can hawk, but that's what they're really into, is promoting themselves and their companies and stuff like that. So I invest in their written works, and then they go and sell them how they can. So that's the kind of model I like to use. It shows that there's a little bit of an investment. You know, our vetting process, we have to like what we're doing, we have to like who we're working with to kind of shape it. But that's just the business model that I use. That's not the model of the industry in general. That's just my personal business model.
And keeping in mind that we're speaking from a Western world perspective.
Yes.
I have friends all over the world. They can't afford to buy my books. And so allowing them to read from their phones allows them to read my words, and keeping the price down to the very minimum allows them access to words in the Western world that they normally couldn't afford.
Sure,
And
that makes a lot of sense.
keep that in mind as well.
Mhm.
Also, lately, trying to ship my books around the world has been so costly and lengthy time, and some things are getting lost in the mail. And I'm just thinking, digitally, this doesn't happen.
Yeah,
it's an equalizer to me.
That's true.
So
Yeah,
it's
thanks.
something for us to think about.
Yeah, thank you. Thomas, you have your hand raised there?
Yeah, the question about, you know, the physical copy type thing, I think you go back to the music business where LPs are suddenly becoming really big. You know, maybe Dennis could attest to that. And so I think the younger people, some of them are starting to, you know, listen to music with LPs. So, you know, you don't want to abandon, you know, the physical book.
So these things are interesting to me because we're talking about the industry in particular, right? Paper books, electronic books, what old people like, what young people like. These are all parts of that larger model. What I'm thinking about on a bigger scale is how we perceive small press, right? Whether it's ebooks or, you know, a physical copy of something. How do we perceive this larger world? I'm getting tired of talking about small press and getting stuck into this idea that it's the minor leagues, right? It's not the minor leagues. This is an entity on its own. It's of itself, right? John, did you have something to say there?
I just wanted to read a question that we got on the chat. And Cindy just wanted to know, how do people pitch the small presses?
That depends on, since the small press is not one entity, it's many entities, that depends on the press in general. For Bamboo Dart Press and for Pelicanesis, I don't have an open call. I don't have an open submission period. Bamboo Dart Press, Dennis and I rely on our own authors to recommend people. Stephanie has recommended someone recently, and I'm in conversation with her right now. and John has recommended a couple of people in the past, which I'll be following up with you soon. So we go by word of mouth. We kind of spread naturally, expand naturally as far as authors go. But check the websites, find out what people are thinking. That's my recommendation. Hi, Dennis.
Hey, everybody. Sorry I was late here. I know we're all talking about, we're all are writers and readers, and these labels that keep coming up again and again are not us, and it's not who we are. And so many of you have been doing this for so long. Somebody asks you, what do you write? What genre? And whatever name we affix to that is meaningless. Somebody asked me what kind of record label or small press I run. I don't know. And I don't pretend to know. And as far as submissions, I will read anything, anytime, anywhere. I don't have time, unfortunately, in this life to do everything I'd like to do in that realm. But last week I was in there was a blog for older people to learn how to blog. I don't know how to blog that well. These are people in their 70s and 80s. And there was a nun who lived up the street from me who was starting a blog. And she was so kind. And then I start reading her blog, and it is some of the best writing I've read in years, and just beautiful and moving. And you never know when you're gonna, I'll read something by Stephanie. I don't have a cell phone, but on my Dell computer, and it will move me just as much as if it were on a Kindle or in a book. The point is creating that community, I think, for all of us, and sharing our thoughts, how we get there, we get there.
Yeah, that's very true. And yeah, I agree with you. And that blog, I was reading some of that also, and it's good writing. It's really interesting. And she is publishing on the web right now, which is a totally valid way to publish things. I think it's interesting. Stephanie, you have your hand up there.
Yeah, thanks so much. Loving this conversation. I just want to come back to this great point that, the perception is that small press is minor league, and it really isn't. And you kind of led in this direction, several questions ago. I just want to come back to it. So what can we do? What can we do to kind of change that? And I think one of the things we can do, it seems like a very small thing, but it's a powerful thing, is recommend small press books to your friends and relatives. My sister-in-law is a former public defender. And when Juanita's book, this is again a Bamboo Dart publication, when that book was in process, I was like, oh my gosh, Judy and all of her totally burnt out public defender friends are going to so appreciate this book. So there that went. And I am just continually kind of keeping an eye out for books that I think my friends and neighbors will like. And because friends and neighbors who aren't in the writing business don't know where to look for small press, because they're looking at bestseller, lists that aren't very interesting. So they really appreciate those recommendations. And I think that can really be powerful.
I think you're right about that. There was a great article over the weekend that Victoria Waddle wrote for the Press Enterprise about holiday shopping and buying local. And this is buying local is a good selling point for independent press as well. And you're absolutely right. These recommendations, spreading the word about quality material, I think that is that speaks volumes. And you're right, that will help change the perception of what small press is and how we approach independent press. So I think that I would like to so as Cindy just said, I have an idea. Can we lose the word small in small press? Which I think is interesting, because I agree, but at the same time, I kind of want to own the word. I kind of want to, like, people are going to use it anyway. Let's claim it. It's kind of like microbrew, right? Just own it. Just go with it, right? We're small press and we're proud of it. And I think that's fine. So I think that if it's okay, Cindy, I think if it's okay, I'd like to start to kind of wrap it up. If people have something else that they want to contribute, I'd love to hear it. But I think it's important to remember that we are involved in this beautiful, productive, vibrant endeavor of small press publishing in the myriad forms. And I think that is essential to the way that we talk about small press. I think that we need to focus on what we do and the successes in our field. We need to recognize other people's accomplishments. We need to say, hey, good job with that. Hey, this is a great book. Here's this book about public defenders that you're gonna love. Really celebrate the successes that we've got in the small press field. I think we need to acknowledge the importance of our production. We are small press, and we are happy to be doing it and proud to be doing it. And in this way, I think we can eventually change the way that people perceive small press publishing. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here. That was a wonderful conversation, and feel free to stick around for a bit, and we can talk a little bit more about whatever. Thank you, and especially the folks from overseas for joining us. That was wonderful to have you here too.
I've had several people asking me if we could get a list of the publishers who come to Culturama. Yeah, that's a really great idea. I think I'll put it on the Culturama community page, and then you can contact Mark or Stephanie or Connie if you're willing, Connie. I just volunteered all of you. Yeah, absolutely. So great. And I'll just put that on the community page. All right. Thank you all. Up next is Anders at 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And I hope you all come back.
And thank you, John, for doing Culturama year after year. It's a wonderful experience, and I love to see all the faces, and it's just great. So thank you very much for doing this.
This is my 20th year officially. So.
Wow, nice.
Thank you, Mark. Good conversation.